2022 Planning Commission to order. Madam Clerk, will you do a roll call?
Commissioner Glenn,
Here.
Commissioner Allen,
Here.
Commissioner Chesbro. Here. Commissioner Rubio is absent. Commissioner Kendig,
Here.
Commissioner Glashan,
Present.
Commissioner Scoggin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Do we have any additions or changes in the agenda? Seeing none here, Commissioner Allen?
No, sir.
All right. Any objection to approving the agenda as written? No objections here. Commissioner Allen?
No, sir.
All right. Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved. Mr. Ortiz, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for the consent agenda tonight, we have the regular meeting minutes from the June 6, 2022 meeting. And we've got some fun reading, so please be patient. We have introduction for public hearing quasi-judicial matters. Resolution 22-22, conditional use permit in accordance with MSB 17.60, conditional uses for a marijuana cultivation facility located at 23161 West Ashire Avenue, tax ID 4136B03L004, then Township 16 North, Range 4 West, Section 32, Seward, Meridian. Public hearing date is August 1st. The applicant, Brandon Bartlett, doing business as Denali Farms, and his attorney, Gianna Weltzen. Staff is Ms. Horton. We also have a conditional use permit, Resolution 22-24, conditional use permit in accordance with MSB 17.30, conditional use permit for earth materials extraction activities for the extraction of 42,000 cubic yards of earth material from 2 extraction sites totaling 4 acres within 4 parcels, which total 8.35 acres. Tax IDs are 8101B01L002, 8102B01L003, 8102B02L001, and 8102B02L002, located with the Township 18 North, Range 1 East, Section 31, Seward, Meridian. Public hearing date is also August 1st. The applicant, John Summer of AK Frontier Rental. Staff will be Mr. Weisenhunt. Introduction for public hearing, legislative matters. PC Resolution 22-19, a resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission recommending the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly move to repeal MSB 17.10 overlay districts. Public hearing is August 1st. Staff is Ms. Anderson. Resolution PC 22-23, a resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Planning Commission recommending the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly move to repeal MSB 17.06, electrical generating and delivery facility in its entirety. Public hearing is August 1st. Quite a meeting. Staff on that is Mr. Strawn. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda as written? Seeing none here, Commissioner Allen?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, hearing and seeing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. All right, so tonight we're not going to skip over audience participation. So any member of the audience that would like to speak for 3 minutes on any topic that is not up for discussion tonight, a reminder, the agenda tonight is Resolution 22-20, the short title, the Beverly Lakes Management Plan. So you can speak to that when we have that public hearing. So if there's anyone that would like to speak to us about anything else, they have 3 minutes. All right, no member of the audience has stepped forward. Is there anyone online who would like to speak for 3 minutes? Okay. No, this is for anything other than the Beverly Lakes Management Plan. All right. Is there any objection to closing the public audience participation? Hearing and seeing none. Commissioner Allen?
No objection.
All right, audience participation is closed. So we are on to public hearings, legislative matters, PC Resolution 22-20, a resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission recommending the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly adopt the Beverly Lakes Management Plan and an ordinance amending MSB 17.59 Lake Management Plan implementation. Ms. Anderson?
All right. Oh, it is working. Okay, we're live. Well, thank you for having me, Planning Commissioners. My name is Kelsey Anderson. I work in the Planning Services Division under Kim Solian, and I'm here to talk about the Beverly Lake Management Plan. So to begin, I will start out this presentation with a brief history about lake management planning in the borough, just to provide a little bit of context for the plan, why we do lake management planning, things like that. And then I'll dive more specifically into the Beverly Lakes Lake Management Plan. We're going to look at the timeline, the public outreach and involvement, the issues summary, and the draft plan. And then we'll talk about the final ballot and recommendations for moving forward. Oh, sorry, Jason. Next slide.
Yeah, if you want to just tell me, go ahead or next.
Yeah, I
So I
will.
apologize for those in the audience. Usually Kelsey's able to control her the slide here by herself, but I'm going to be controlling it up here.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to work in tandem, and hopefully you guys can follow along.
It's cool. It'll make me slow down a little bit. So if you want to go one more. All right. So the borough's been doing lake management planning since 1995. There are currently 41 assembly adopted lake management plans in borough code. We see these borough-wide, but there are concentrations of lake management plans. And where we see that is where there's concentrated amounts of people living year-round. So there's just that higher, there's an increased amount of user conflict and things like that, that communities look to lake management plans to help mitigate. So for instance, Meadow Lakes Community Council area, which is where Beverly Lakes resides, has 6 lake management plans just within the community council area. We also see a lot of them up around Talkeetna and out near Big Lake, and in the Palmer-Wasilla areas. We do have enforceable regulation, or we have the power as a borough to enforce regulations on water bodies within our boundary. Those regulations include quiet hours, personal watercraft use, motorized watercraft use, winter vehicles, ice house registrations, special permits, and I think that that's it. But I might have missed one. And as far as the type of planning that we do here at the borough, this is as grassroots as we get. The borough does not ever seek out a lake management plan. A community has to go through a petition and a ballot process to even get us to start thinking about what that plan might look like, what kind of regulations would be included, that sort of thing. So it really is put out as an opportunity for local governance for communities that reside around lakes. Next slide, please. So in 1999, the Borough Assembly standardized regulations to provide a framework for lake management planning. They realized between 1995 and 1999 that there was a lack of consistency in the regulations that they were adopting for lake management plans. So they worked with Alaska Department of Fish and Game and came up with some broad standards that would kind of be the starting point for the conversation for lake management planning. What that looks like is for lakes 75 acres and less, you have 100 feet no wake zone, some quiet hours, personal watercraft restriction, and a 10 horsepower limit. And then it goes up from there, 75 acres to 100. You're seeing a lot more leniency with motorized use and personal watercraft use. Still kind of maintaining that 100 feet wake zone and quiet hours. Those are primarily just because people who live around lakes have, like there's an opportunity to be loud and rowdy and stuff like that late at night when you're out having fun. So that's just something that they thought would kind of be universal throughout whatever lake size it is. People are going to still want to be able to go to bed at a reasonable hour. I will say with these standards, there's a timeshare option kind of included in all of them. That timeshare option essentially means that you can increase motorized use and decrease quiet hours on federal holidays in the summer and weekends. So just for context, Beverly Lake is a 42-acre lake according to Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and its mean depth is 9 feet with a max depth of 20 feet. So we'll kind of come back to these standards later on when we're talking about the regulations specifically for Beverly Lake, but just wanted to keep that in your mind. So next slide, please. All right, so more specifically with Beverly Lake, I wanted to give you a timeline just to kind of give you a context of the work that we've been doing and when we've been doing it. So as I said, grassroots planning options. So the community members had to bring a valid petition to me and say, we are interested in starting a lake management plan process. And in order to have a valid petition, you need 50% or more than 50% of all property owners within a 600-foot buffer of the shoreline. That 600 feet comes from borough code, and it then becomes the standard for noticing throughout the entire lake management planning process. So we received that petition in November. That kicks off a slew of borough regulations that I have to follow in order to do the public noticing correctly and all of that. So the next step is a ballot and or is public notice and a ballot. So I had to send a letter out to all of the parcels that are within that 600 feet buffer. I said, community members of yours have brought in a petition, and now I need you to tell me, like, check this box, yes or no. Do you want to start a lake management plan or do you not? Obviously, because we're here, there was a majority of respondents that said, yes, we want to start a lake management plan. Those ballots came in February. And then so after that, it really kicks off this public education and outreach portion where we facilitate public meetings. We provided a website, things like that, to get the community engaged in this planning process. In May, we sent out the final ballot that had the different regulation options, and in a majority of respondents also said, yes, we want to move this forward to the Planning Commission and to the Assembly. So that is where we're at, is we're going to do this public hearing, bring it to the Assembly, and see how it goes. Next slide, please. All right. Public outreach and involvement. I don't normally put this many words on a slide, so what I want you to take away from this is there was a lot of it. We created a website. We sent out email reminders for all the public meetings, things like that. We had 2 in-person public meetings at the Wasilla Library. We also had 1 virtual meeting as well to facilitate for those who couldn't make it in person. There was also updates to the Meadow Lakes Community Council, and they would put it up on their website. I updated the district assembly person, Ron Bernier, as well, posting at public access points. So there was a lot of opportunities for residents and community members and the general public as well to be involved in this planning process. And what we saw was a major increase between the initial respondents to the first ballot and the final ballot. Next slide, please. So what did that public outreach actually look like? So the first public meeting that we had was at the Wasilla Public Library. I believe there was about 25 or 30 people that showed up. And it started off with me giving kind of a presentation like this, just going over the history, why we do it, what we're actually able to enforce on water bodies. And then did a mic pass for every person that was there. And we just listened. We listened to all the issues and concerns and why people love living on the lake. And what the pictures that you're looking at on here is flip charts that we used to just grab out some themes. And you see things like loon population, good communication amongst neighbors, investment in your property. There's a lot of great issues that were brought up. And most people had very similar concerns is what we found. And so the second part of the meeting was breaking into small groups. And two really amazing things happened as soon as people broke into smaller groups. And the first thing was this immediate connection with your neighbor. One thing that really stands out to me is there were these two people sitting in a small group, and one of them was talking about how he wasn't sure if he wanted a lake management plan, but last summer his dock was broken because of a jet skier. There was a kid that was riding irresponsibly. And so he was like, I don't know if I want it, but this happened. And so there's these real life implications, right? And the person sitting across from him was like, that sounds like my jet ski. That sounds like my kid. There was an immediate connection happening between these residents that they were solving their problems, and they were talking together in a way that I don't think would have ever happened without a lake management plan process. The second thing that really stood out to me was they started wheeling and dealing and compromising almost immediately. There was I'll give you quiet hours if you give me no wake zone. And they were just working together as a team. And it was really spectacular to see. That unfortunately didn't last through the entire process, but it was really good to see at the front. And I think people came together recognizing that there's a lot of common issues that they want to solve as a community. Next slide, please. So getting into kind of that issue summary and what the draft plan looks like. Like I said, there were common themes. So I drew out quality of life, motorized watercraft / personal watercraft use, habitat protection, safety, and personal property damages as the main reasons why people were becoming involved and speaking up and being a part of the process. The full summary of which is actually in the draft plan that you all have in your packet. So I'm not going to dive too deep into it today, but I took the issue summary and next slide, drafted the actual Beverly Lake Management Plan. And so since I came to the borough a year and a half ago, our division has been looking at lake management planning in general, seeing how we can improve it, seeing how we can maybe make the plans a little bit more user-friendly. So I really tried hard to do that with this one in the sense that it's 17 pages versus 100 pages. And we're really clear about the intent behind why the community initiated this lake management plan. And so all the issues that I noted in the last slide, I go into very great detail about both sides, what people were saying, what they were looking for, and then develop some goals out of that in order to get to the root cause of those issues. And then from that comes the regulations that come alongside a lake management plan. Next slide. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's that borough standard that's just based on lake size. It doesn't take into consideration the size of the lake or how people like to recreate. So after the first two meetings, all the residents voted to have a third meeting. They wanted to actually see what a lake management plan would look like for them, and they wanted to see what the regulations were. Well, in the midst of me developing the plan, I received two different regulation packages from two different groups of Beverly Lake residents. So that's what you're seeing right here on this slide. Option A is quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Sunday through Saturday, a no-wake zone of 150 feet, motorized use up to 15 horsepower, a ban on personal watercraft use, and then allowing for winter vehicle use. Option B is quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Friday through Saturday. A no-wake zone. Oh, actually, sorry, that's a typo. In the actual final ballot that we sent out, there was no regulation on wake zone. So that's my bad. Motorized use allowed on odd days of the week and federal holidays. Personal watercraft allowed on odd days of the week and federal holidays. And then also allowing for winter vehicle use. So part of the third meeting that we had in person, we went there with the hope of having people vote that evening on working through regulation possibilities, coming up with something they could live with, and then saying, yes, I want this to go forward, or no, I don't. We quickly found out in the meeting that there was not going to be any sort of compromise on regulations. So it was Camp A, Camp B, or essentially option B was developed by those who really did not want a plan, but they kind of would have rather seen these regulations. So this was their compromise, essentially. So I had to steer the ship in an entirely different direction in the middle of the third meeting, and decided to forgo the original ballot idea and to go with a ranked choice voting for the three options that were at the on the table at that point in time. So, next slide, please. The final ballot looked like this. It had option A, option B, which is the two regulations from the previous slide, and option C, which is no plan, because that's always kind of been the de facto option, right? You're either going to have one, it's going to have regulations, or you're not going to have a plan at all. So I think about a week and a half, 2 weeks after that final meeting, I had this final ballot ready with educational information about ranked choice voting, because that was also a learning curve for some people. But I went that direction because there are three options, and I think a lot of people were hoping that they were wondering if their vote was going to get split, essentially, if they voted for one over the other. So this provided me with an opportunity to find a very clear majority in using this style of voting. So gave them 2 weeks to send this ballot back to me. And next slide, please. And it turned out that 54 of respondents voted in favor of moving forward a lake management plan to the Planning Commission and the Assembly with option A regulations. That's the ban on motor or personal watercraft use, the 15 horsepower limit on motorized use, a no wake zone of 150 feet from the shoreline, and quiet hours Sunday through Saturday. Next slide, please. We're almost done. So the petition and ballot process, I just wanted to kind of line it all up for you to showcase that residents have had 3 different opportunities to show their support or show their lack of support for lake management planning. And each time there was a majority showing that property owners within 600 feet of Beverly Lake want a lake management plan. The numbers are 53% of all property owners signed that initial petition. Then the first ballot that went out, that checkbox, yes or no, 62% of respondents said that they wanted to initiate a lake management plan. The final ballot that I just showed you, 54% of respondents were in favor of a lake management plan with that ban on jet skis and a horsepower limit. And then I went one step further just because within the final meeting and the ballot and this meeting, I got a lot of public feedback from residents being like, it's not really that fair that people within 600 feet of a lake get to vote on what I can do with my lakefront property. I have several reasons why I think that's in place and why I think it actually does a lot of good for public assets, such as public water bodies in the borough. But I wanted to see, out of curiosity, if shoreline property owners who voted would have also, like if it would have passed. And so 52% of respondents who own shoreline property around Beverly Lake also voted for option A and voted to have a lake management plan. Next slide, please. So, I mean, it really is the will of the majority of Beverly Lake residents, of shoreline property owners, of those within that 600-foot buffer. We did, like I said, have a very extensive public outreach and education campaign with this plan. There are over 40 residents that participated in public meetings. I received 31 written comments that were included in your packet. So, Jason, next slide, please. So I would recommend that the adoption of resolution number 2220, recommending the MSB Assembly adopt the Beverly Lake Lake Management Plan and its corresponding regulations as voted on by the Beverly Lakes residents. And there's a final slide, but it's just my contact info. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah,
Commissioner Kendig?
I as you said, 52% of lake residents. Is that just Beverly Lake, or is it counting the lake right behind it?
Kalmbach Lake was not included. So for the shoreline property owners,
Yes, the 52%.
yes, yeah. So that is just Beverly Lakes. That's
Okay.
not Kalmbach Lake.
Thank you.
We have questions down here. Commissioner Allen, do you have any questions for Ms. Anderson?
Just very quickly, thank you. I didn't hear anything about any kind of grandfathering in. What about all these people that have already purchased jet skis and stuff, have invested money in personal watercraft? Are they just out of luck? They have to sell their jet skis?
Good question. The borough does not have any sort of grandfather rights or anything like that as it pertains to motorized use or motorized regulations on water bodies.
Anything else, Commissioner Allen?
No, thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Scoggin?
Is there public access to Beverly Lakes?
There is. It is not a public access that anyone with a boat or a jet ski could use. There's no boat launch or gravel like driveway or anything. It's pretty much walk-in. Yeah.
All right. I've just got one question. So having never voted in ranked choice voting before, and maybe this is for legal, is that the way all borough votes go from now on? Or?
So it should be said, this is not like an official election. It's not an official like borough vote in the way that we're going to start doing ranked choice voting for like state officials and that kind of stuff. I used it because it's a really good option when you have 3 or more options. It essentially doesn't allow for a split vote between like they would vote 30% for option A, 30% for option B, and then the rest for option C. But it honestly didn't even come into play because because the groups were so split between option A and no plan. Nobody put option B as their first choice. So there was a clear majority with counting the people's first preference. Like everybody either voted for option A for the most restrictive plan or no plan at all.
So if I understand, regardless of ranked choice voting, just a simple
Right.
old-fashioned vote
Yes,
came out in favor.
100%.
Thank you. Any last questions? All right, with that, I will open the public hearing on PC Resolution 22-20, the Beverly Lakes Management Plan. We've got a large number of people. I apologize in advance if I butcher your name. The other thing I will remind anybody who is offering comment on this is that as the Planning Commission, we're an advisory vote to the Assembly. They can take our recommendation and go forward. They can change it. They can do whatever they want. They make the law. We just give suggestions. So with that, it looks like we have the Tillett guessing family, Shelley, Carol, and Les. If you guys would form a line at the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And before you give your testimony, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
I can't
She
hear
doesn't
you.
hear well. You need to spell your last name.
Tillett. Shelley is my first name.
Thank you, ma'am. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm just going to speak from my heart. I didn't make any notes or anything. But my husband and I have lived out on the lake now for many, many years. And we have already lost the redneck grebes that used to nest on our lake. And I don't want to see the swans and the loons and the ducks to go. And, you know, it does cause a problem with the jet skiers and the water skiing. You can't get up to a good rate to make that curve. Our lake is too small for big motors. So that's basically all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Carol Tillett. Last name's Tillett. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to hear us out. I'm just going to read mine so I can get it all in. Beverly Lake is also a neighborhood with families who work, raise their children like any neighborhood. Up until last summer, I worked shift positions, long hours as a nurse with high acuity, including COVID patients. I did not expect the neighborhood to shut down so that I could sleep. Earplugs work fine, except when the jet skis are out. The sound literally reverberates through the house. There's no way to escape it. If there are people playing on the lake or having a backyard barbecue, these sounds carry as well, but they're tolerable, even happy noises, and if necessary, are easily blocked out with earplugs. 4 to 5 hours of jet ski use at a time meant when I came home exhausted, I went back to work exhausted. A good analogy to me would be if we had drag races on our street for 4 to 5 hours. You can't watch TV, read, anything requiring rest or concentration stops until that noise ends. At one of our meetings, we heard Sarah Myers, who, if I understand correctly, is a lake habitat biologist with Fish and Game. She told us that ideally loons need 70 acres, I believe, she might have said 60, to thrive. This means we have been fortunate enough to have them establish themselves here on our 40-acre lake. During our meetings, Kelsey tried very hard, even up into the last minute, to help us come up with a compromise, including establishing the no-wake zone. She tried for 150 feet, then 100 feet, or tried for a 50, then 100, and then 150 feet. The jet skiers want no wake zone. This means they can continue to ski at high speeds close to the shoreline where the nesting birds are harassed, erosion and dock damage can occur, and anyone in the water at the edge of the lake must leave. This is a lake for all of us to use. It's in the state regs as a public stocked lake. If someone ventures here to drop their canoe in to see if they'll see the wildlife or catch a nice sized trout, they could be very disappointed. If there are jet skiers out, no one else is on the lake for those 4 to 5 hours at a time. The swans, ducks, loons are terrorized and try to hide on the shore. I live at the end of the shore where they nest. Forget seeing the muskrats or the river otter, and the fish will have to retreat to the bottom of the lake, and they don't come up for a while afterwards. Sadly, this is turning neighbor against neighbor when we have so much more in common than this issue. But the noise, the potential damage to the wildlife, personal safety, and property damage makes it a serious issue. There are larger and much more appropriate venues for this activity very nearby. We're in Beverly Lake, and they were just minutes from Big Lake and rivers where these jet skis would be more appropriate. You have the power to help us change something for the better, our neighborhood quality of life and wildlife protection, and maybe help set a precedence for other lakefront neighborhoods so that their path to peace might be a little easier. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leslie Tillett, Tillett. While growing up as a child in Anchorage, my father and I took me and my brothers out many times out to remote lakes, rivers, to go float fishing or just camp out on the lakes. In 1983, I moved out to Beverly Lake. It's a nice, pristine lake that had that same feeling of being in the wilderness, except it was in the city or outside the city limits, but inside the community areas. Wild animals of all kinds, moose coming through the yards in the winter, waterfowl, migratory, as well as ones that nest in the lake of various different kinds. Eagles circling overhead, exactly the experience you want when you want to live in rural Alaska or a remote area. When I first moved out there, there was about 10 homes that had people or families living in them. Now it's over 2 dozen, and the area has been growing fast. As you're probably well aware, but Meadow Lakes area is one of the fastest growing areas in the state of Alaska. As we look at the growth that's going to take place over the coming years, we have to bear in mind that planning is looking at the future, not right now, not tomorrow, not next year. And it would be nice to keep Meadow Lakes or the Beverly Lake a pristine area that it is, a place where not just people on the lake, but visitors can come and enjoy. Unfortunately, the high-speed vehicles, motorboats, and jet skis are not compatible with that, especially on a lake half the size of what they're recommending. Under 75 acres, it's only a 42-acre lake. People enjoy kayaking, fishing, swimming, paddleboat, paddleboard, canoeing, all on this lake. Those activities on a lake this small are simply not compatible with somebody racing around on jet skis. It's that simple. There just is not enough room for it. And then you're also looking at the wildlife, the disturbance of the wildlife, erosion of the banks. Something needs to be done to preserve the lake, not just for us, but for 50 years from now and 100 years from now, so that everybody can enjoy it. The 2 lake accesses on the lake, one's 33 foot wide and hasn't been really developed other than a little trail. But the state owns a large chunk of the lake, about a quarter of the lake frontage on it with road access. And that's where they have developed a trail going in there, but they've also developed parking lot for people to go in. Eventually that will be developed so that people can bring in whatever type of craft they want. Right now you're limited to carrying in canoes and kayaks, but that will be boats later on unless something is done to protect the area. And that's my perspective on it. One last comment, and that's literally the definition of planning. It's a process of thinking regarding activities required to achieve a desired goal. Planning is based on foresight, the fundamental capacity for mental time travel, to look into the future and see what you want years from now, not just right now. I hope you take all this into consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Link, Tisha Link.
Good evening. Thank you for being here today. My name is Tish, last name Link, L-I-N-K. My husband and I have lived on the lake for about 14 years with our 2 kids that we have there now. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but basically same goes as everyone has said prior. The lake is only 42 acres. It is slender and narrow, which creates a big problem for a jet ski even going down the middle. Their wakes can rock our docks and homes and shoreline simply just because of the way our lake is arranged, like the way it looks. We have seen noticeable changes in the wildlife recently. Loons and swans return to our lake every year, and they nest right on the edge of the water due to where their legs are at the very back. And this year they had to choose a new place for their nest. They went to the opposite end of the water, and we don't like to see that. It is important to mention that this process was started back in 2018 with our first signature on the petition. So we have been at this for a long time, and we are here tonight because it is very important to us, and we do care about what happens to our homes, and we want to protect it for the future of our kids and whoever comes after us. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a wild guess. Brenda Davis? Okay. Again, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hi, my name is Brenda Davis. The last name is Davis. My grandparents were the first property owners on Beverly Lake. They purchased in 1966, and we've been there ever since. We're 5 generations there now, either camping, living full-time. We own several lots on the end of the lake. It's the dead end of the lake, so we can see the long way down the center of the lake. It is narrow, and we can see both sides and all activity. The comments that I have basically address the letters that I saw that were submitted. There are no ocean boats on our lake. There are no high-speed jet boats on our lake. Maybe 6 days in the summer, there might be a jet ski out playing in the middle of the lake. Not even maybe that many days. The entire 4-day weekend for 4th of July, there was no boat on the lake of any kind. We fish from the lake. We have all learned to water ski on the lake and drive boats on the lake and swim on the lake. We don't have an issue with the boats, the lakes, the wildlife, anything. There is no decrease in wildlife. There's been no effect. We have submitted photos that are in the packet and taken many photos this summer of the swan families, the grebe families, the loon families, the duck families, the muskrats, because we're on the end of the lake where the grass and swamp area is, and that's where they heavily nest. So there's lots of young ducklings and all of that. This all, I believe, began because over 3 years ago, somebody visiting someone else's home borrowed a jet ski, and a homeowner thought that that jet ski came too close to their dock and their swimming children, and that's what started this entire thing. We do not need more rules, more laws, more regulation, more government. We are good with it the way it stands, and we'd like to see it left alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Last name Barry? Barry? All right, Ms. Barry?
She wrote my name down.
I thought it looked similar.
I'm Diane Berry, Berry. That's my daughter. And that's my folks that she was talking about, Les and Laverne Fine. They were the first ones to build on the lake and live there permanently, but they built a cabin in 1966. And they had bought the property a couple years before that, but they didn't build the cabin until 1966. And when they retired from the city of Anchorage, they moved up here, sold a house in town, moved up here, and lived in the cabin while they built their house, and been there ever since. And so we've been coming up to that particular little lake for many, many, many years. My kids, my grandkids, and now my great-grandkids have enjoyed the lake and hope to in the future. And like my daughter was saying, there's been no issue with, if anything gets the wildlife, it's the eagles or the hawks. I've seen big hawks out there this year, and there's always eagles. So they're the ones that are responsible if there's missing little ducklings or whatever. We live, like she said, we live right on the end of the lake, and we can see the whole thing. And you know, not going any further. It's just then, you know, because my daughter kind of went into it. But we have a whole big family here. We've always respected people. We've never, you know, abused, made noise late at night or anything like that. Maybe on the 4th of July if we had fireworks, or maybe on New Year's. But I just don't see why people move in and then try to change things. I don't understand that. It's happening, and it's not fair. So that's my issue. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Elvgas? Elva, there's probably another syllable in there. Yes, Brittany.
Okay. Brittany Elsass, Elvsaas. I know it's a hard last name. I just wanted, like, as Kelsey was saying, I kind of wanted to put a visual to everybody. I know you had asked the question about, like, those are actual voters on the lake that had voted for the lake.
Sorry, ma'am,
management
could you make sure you speak into the mic so everyone can hear? Thank
It
you.
was actual, voters on this map that had voted for the lake management plan, minus a few people that I don't know, but just as a visual, because I'm a visual person. When I first moved in, I guess I moved into Beverly Lake, or moved on Beverly Lake about 13 years ago. And I gotta say, when I first moved in, I wanted jet skis. But it took me a few weeks into spending my first spring here to realize that there was one common denominator. Everyone else on the lake either had paddle boats or kayaks or canoes. It was a very quiet and peaceful lake, so we never ever put jet skis on the lake. At the recent lake management plan meetings with the borough, people had mentioned that we can all be respectful of each other. My only thought on that is if there was this many of my neighbors upset with me for riding jet skis, then I would quit doing it out of the respect for my neighbors. Because really the lake is everyone's backyard. There are a lot of people living on the lake that do not like the loud noise created by these machines. Since Beverly Lake is a small and narrow lake, this noise can be very disturbing to people. Wake from personal watercraft and boats erode shorelines, disturb sensitive shoreline vegetation, and degrade fish and wildlife habitat. Personal watercraft have serious negative impacts on birds, including interruption to normal feeding activity and repeated displacement from nesting areas. Unsuccessful nesting or above average mortality rate may occur during the nesting season if nests are harassed or frequented by personal watercraft and swamped by their wave action. I don't know, we have a established pair of loons on our lake, and I would really like to see them there for many years to come. Really what it boils down to is that the use of personal watercraft and boats that use motors over 15 horsepower really conflicts with other user groups trying to use the lake to fish, kayak, paddleboat, canoe, paddleboard, or even swim. It limits the usage to only them because of the waves they create, and quite frankly, that's not fair to all the other users of the lake. They create an extremely unsafe environment for swimmers, and people have witnessed safety issues on Beverly Lake from jet skis and boaters on the lake. So personally speaking, my own son 1 year was almost hit by a fast-moving boater on the lake, a very fast boat we have on the lake, and he was almost hit, and it scared the heck out of me. If me and my 6-year-old paddleboard, we have to get off the lake as soon as jet skis or a high-powered boat goes on the lake. I don't know, if everyone had respect for everyone else on the lake, that'd be one thing, but they don't. Me and my children love jet skis, okay? But we go to Big Lake to enjoy those activities. Beverly Lake is just too small of a lake. And increased development over the years has brought on increased lake usage and corresponding increase in user conflicts. As more people use the lake, conflicts among users occur or have occurred. Bird nesting may be disturbed, environmental degradation may occur, and the overall quality of the experience on Beverly Lake has declined. This is an unregulated lake that the borough put out a ballot with 3 different options for a lake management plan, and the majority vote came back that residents want to adopt the lake management plan that was brought here today.
Miss, your 3 minutes.
So
are up.
I'm asking the Planning Commission to respect our majority vote for the protection of wildlife safety and welfare and for the quality of life of everyone living on Beverly Lake. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, wait, yeah.
My name is Patricia Fisher. I'm a resident of Meadow Lakes. Very, very briefly, I just want to commend the Borough Planning Department and the Planning Commission for following the process for this lake management plan. It's been quite a few years since a lake management plan has come before the commission, and they're very complex and very obviously very emotional issues are involved here. So particularly I applaud Kelsey for doing the job that she did to put it all together. And I want to encourage you all to follow the recommendation of the planning department on this lake management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dickey?
My name is Teresa Dickey, Dickey. The Beverly Lake Management Plan presented in tonight's meeting doesn't allow nearly 46% of those involved have a say in how we can use our lake. Beverly Lake and Kallenbach Lakes are uniquely situated with less than 100 feet separating them for about half the length of Beverly Lake. Because the borough allows people owning property within 600 feet of the lake, almost half the property owners on the opposite side of the road surrounding Beverly Lake are not within the 600 feet. At least 4 homes are actually on Kallenbach Lake. Nearly half of the votes were from owners who don't live on the lake, yet have a say in how we can recreate on the lake. We had 3 public hearings to work out a compromise. Borough Representative Kelsey Anderson conducted the meetings. During the last meeting, we were working through a compromise, and the people that wanted the most restrictive plan were losing. They were not getting their way, so they started complaining. Kelsey, who was under some kind of imagined time constraint, dropped the process. Instead of continuing or rescheduling additional meetings, she chose the most restrictive plan and one of the several compromises. The vote was supposed to take place that night with 10 days to return the ballots. Instead, it took two full weeks to send out a new ballot with ranked choice. It was the most restrictive. A was the most restrictive, B was the compromise, and C was no plan at all. There should have been 2 choices, yes for a plan or no. No one voted for the compromise because it would have divided the vote. One property owner who happens to own 7 lots for sale in the Kallenbach subdivision, where no houses are built, gave the opposing side the votes they needed to win. Without those votes, they would have lost. We are a deeply divided nation, and now our neighbors are deeply divided. Kelsey had said from the beginning that it would be politically unfeasible for a plan to go through without 60 to 70% of those involved agreeing to the plan. That did not happen. I feel she misled us, and at the end did a bait and switch, not allowing any compromise. She gave 2 weeks, not the original 10 days, to return the ballots. She was in a hurry to end the meeting, then took her sweet time getting the ballots out, and then gave additional time to return the ballots. Things stated about safety, wildlife, and erosion have not been substantiated. Instead of talking to neighbors when problems arise, the opposition chose to bully this plan into being. If folks wanted a management plan, they should move, or if folks want a managed lake, they should move to a managed lake, not come in and change things that have worked well for 60 years. They claim property damage, eroding banks, and endangered waterfowl. The wind has done more property damage than any jet ski. Clear cutting all the vegetation down to the lake along with seasonal wind damage has caused erosion. As of June 18, when this meeting was supposed to take place, there were loons with 2 babies, swans with 5 babies, 2 sets of ducks with babies. Since that time, unfortunately, a juvenile eagle is taking the wildlife. At least 1 loon is missing and 2 or 3 swan babies are gone. The wildlife is strong and healthy on Beverly Lake. It is the wildlife that claims the credit for the loss.
Ma'am, could you please wrap up your statement?
Okay, I have lived on the lake, and 4 generations of my family have had it. And I would ask that you not send this forward to the assembly, that you send it back and have us come up with a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mousy?
Craig Mauzy, Mauzy. I've been on the lake since 1999, off and on, and then permanent since 2010. I personally saw an ocean boat out there. I don't know if I was the only person, but it was there, so it's not a lie. There have been several high-speed boats, and the jet skis are, I know today's standard are up to 310 horsepower. So in my mind, that's too much for a small lake. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Odom?
I think Kelsey read my notes before I got in here. I just met her 2 minutes before the meeting started. But anyway, Craig Odom, O-D-O-M. Safety for everyone. Paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, jet skis, speedboats are a disaster waiting to happen when on the water at the same time. I did send the commission a couple short videos that I filmed with my cell phone. Unfortunately, It did not actually capture the fines and the settlement being washed from the bank as each wave slapped into the shoreline. So I don't know why it's okay for someone to get up and cut donuts in the middle of the lake and everything and have the waves crash into the shoreline and erode my property. With some of the examples that Kelsey gave, I'm cutting my notes way in half. Beverly Lake is 42 acres, which we've all heard a couple of times. And given the few examples from the other lakes, they all primarily prohibit jet skis. And a lot of them motorized vehicle or watercraft with some horsepower limitations. A lot of them are electric motors only. Again, Beverly Lake's 42 acres. With the examples that were given in comparison, I think Beverly Lake is definitely one that qualifies for a lake management plan. The recommendation of the staff to adapt and implement this plan, I do believe, is just. And as far as those that have the jet skis and working with the neighbors, obviously you can see we're extremely divided. If I were to go ask a neighbor, hey, can you not ride your jet ski on the lake? I think he'd probably tell me politely no. Again, as comments were already made, I'll reiterate, we're not looking for today and tomorrow and next week. We're looking for years to come. These jet skis are extremely powerful. The horsepower on these things, I mean, we all know our four-wheelers. Look at our side-by-sides. I mean, these things, they get bigger and better and more powerful year after year, and the development and the technology that goes into them. And jet skis have no brakes. So anyway, I support the resolution or the proposal before you to send forward. I look for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we have, appears to be the Smith family, Jacob, Jennifer, and Micah.
I'll start with, my name is Jacob Smith. Last name is S-M-I-T-H. I have been living on Beverly Lake for 18 years. I have been a responsible user of that lake. I have a family, 5 kids, a whole bunch of grandkids. I bought the lake to be able to use with my kids, water skiing, swimming, paddleboarding, just the same as everybody else. But, you know, I am a powerboat user. I use a lake responsibly. I think the motion to deny responsible users access to the lake isn't fair. I also would like to point out that the ballot that we were presented didn't have any provisions in it for winter use. It issues a 15 horsepower limit on the lake, regardless of summer or winter activities. You guys can review the ballot yourselves to view. So I think, you know, the whole voting process that we went through was null and void, right? I think we can come up with a good management plan for the lake. I don't think that includes jeopardizing, you know, or limiting other people's access to use their power boats. So in my opinion, according to the plan that we did vote for, it would eliminate four-wheeler use, snow machine use, anything over 15 horsepower on the lake, regardless of the season. So thanks for your time. Like I said,
Thank you, sir.
Jennifer Smith, last name S-M-I-T-H. So we moved to Lake in 2004, got married on the lake, and had our, we came with 3 kids and had 2 more. So I've raised 5 kids on the lake. We probably are one of the families that use the lake most that I see year round. We have every boat. We have kayaks, paddle boards. We have a little 10-horse flat bottom boat that my son drives around. And then we also have bigger boats that let's see, we have a river boat that we put in occasionally. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 times a summer, but it's probably been 2 years since we've even done that. You know, our summer activities in Alaska, times that we even want to dip a toe in the lake, are very small. Not to mention Beverly Lake also has swimmer's itch. So the lake activity in the water, it sounds maybe that it's been excessive. So we had a new family move in. It was like a brand new hot tub. They were on the water with the jet skis and really threw the neighborhood into shock. Once we started communicating, like our first meeting, like Kelsey said, I was more excited just to meet all the neighbors and ready to have a potluck, you know? So since then, we've kind of been able to go to different houses. We've had different meetings. I even attended a meeting that I wasn't really invited to, you know? So we've had one-sided meetings, and then we've had meetings where we've all kind of come together. It's been hard to negotiate. Some of the people really are adamant, no jet skis whatsoever, and that seems to be the biggest one. My role in this whole thing was trying to find compromise, because I have friends on both sides, and I love our lake community, and we have a really precious lake that we all adore. So what I think I've seen happen is we found a compromise. And the people that had jet skis even sold them already. The one family that moved in didn't realize the kind of the feel or the vibe of the lake being pretty mellow for the most part. And they had, I think, one 4th of July 3 years ago now. We had 6 jet skis on the lake, but that's never happened since. It's kind of dwindled ever since then. So I have seen 1 jet ski on the lake this summer because everybody's waiting to see what would happen. So that tells me that we actually are willing to communicate with each other and work it out. If in fact we have a plan that's put into place, what's going to happen is we're going to be policing each other. So one particular house is going to be calling in. There's no enforcement. And that's the bottom line for me, is how are we going to enforce a plan if it does go into place, instead of compromising as neighbors who care about the lake. I do see future, yes, that could be a possibility, but there's no other boat launch. Like, I probably have the best boat launch on the lake. That's completely clear, you know, so we don't let other people come in, you know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Micah, did you change your mind? Yeah. All right.
Come on, Micah.
Mr. Travis, Rick Travis.
My name's Rick Travis, TRAVIS. I've been an owner on Beverly Lake since 1978. I have a boat. I currently have a boat. I don't put it on the lake. My personal feeling is 2 trips around, and now what? It's not big lake. But my dock, I have a floating dock. I've had kids roaring by my dock on my property. I've seen 4 kids in a boat, not a life jacket on any of them, going like a bat out of you know where, and they got no regard, no, not even a life jacket on any of them. And then I've seen jet skis. I've had jet skis on the boat, but we stay away from people's docks. We stay away from their property. We stay away from the wildlife. You wouldn't need a lake management program if everybody did what they were responsible and controlled their boats and their people. And that's about all I got to say. Oh, one other thing. I lived in Birchwood, so I came out of Anchorage. I grew up in this state. You can't have a 4-wheeler, you can't have a boat. We used to take our cars on Fire Lake and Mirror Lake, and then the borough said, no, you can't do this. So I feel sorry for the people who have boats, the responsible owners. I mean, they're not the problem. You don't need a management program if people do what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jenkin, Ed Jenkin.
Thank you. Commissioners, my name's Ed Jenkin. I know some of you know me on a work-related basis. I just want to make it clear I'm not speaking here on behalf of any business. I'm here as a personal owner of property on Beverly Lake. And I'm not here really to speak for or against the plan. I'm here to speak for the community, in my opinion. You have before you a plan that for 52% of the people who have the ability to put a boat on the lake voted for one way and 48% voted the other. We had 3 meetings. 2 were introductory to give people the opportunity to understand, and 1 meeting to bring a compromise. In my work process is we're all about process. We're all about meeting the community, making sure the members have input into the process and coming up with a solution that is best for the community and as much as possible meets the needs of all the community. I would prefer more than 1 meeting to bring a compromise together. So I think the problem we have here is a process that probably wasn't long enough, probably didn't give enough opportunity for compromise. And in my opinion, ranked choice voting leads people to extremes. You have 3 options. Yes, compromise, no. You initially vote for your extreme, and then you vote second for the compromise. I suspect everybody voted their second choice for the compromise. But in ranked choice voting, that doesn't get reflected. What gets reflected are the extremes. It would have been good if we could have worked to a compromise that could have got that 60% or more majority before coming to this body. I'm concerned that even the passage of this body may be causing it still further problems with the assembly with such a slim majority. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Leader, Kelly Leader.
Hi, I'm Callie Leader, Leader. My in-laws bought property on the lake in the 60s and built a small place, and my husband and I moved there in 1981. So I've been there a lot of years watching the wildlife, and what I need to say about that is there have always been loons on that lake. For the first years I was there, the loons nested down at the other end of the lake, away from where I'm at. I'm at the east end. They were nesting at the west end. And loons live 20 to 30 years, so maybe that pair of loons passed away or had new partners or whatever. They moved down to the west end of the lake for 1 or 2 years, and then they moved where they are now at the southwest end of the lake, and they've been nesting there for many years. And so possibly this pair of loons is also getting quite old. We never had swans in the 80s, and maybe late 90s or early 2000s were when we had a pair of swans come on for a couple years. And more recently, we've had swans land there. But if someone wants to say that the boats have kept the swans or the loons from nesting, certainly not the loons, because they're there every year without fail all summer long. And sometimes they have babies and that make it, and sometimes they don't. The swans this year finally decided to nest. And so when swans pick and choose their nest and start laying eggs, that would have to be by the 1st of May pretty much, or by the end of May. They landed on our lake this year on the 21st of April. So they must have chosen their nesting site even long before the ice was out. Originally, when we moved there was only 1 pair of nesting mallards, and they were at the west end of the lake near Dan Drape's house, where the stream comes out. More recently, we've had more mallards on the lake. We sometimes have 4 or 5 females that have clutches of eggs and babies. In fact, this year we had 2 mamas, one with 8 or 10 and one with 6 or 7. And then we had a 3rd mama with 2 little babies just from about 2 weeks ago. So that's a second group as mallards go. So the wildlife has not been affected by that. We still have our muskrats. A long time ago, there may have been a beaver there, but that's been quite a while. So as far as the wildlife is concerned, our lake has not been affected by this year of activity or this year of inactivity or whatever. And I personally watched the swans and the mallards be terrorized by a juvenile eagle. And then in the last 2 days, the adult eagle has been there. We've lost 3 of our swan babies. There's only 2 left. So the wildlife has not been affected, if you want to take that into account.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Losick, Olga? And then Mr. Losick, you might as well come up and be ready.
Olga, Olgalosik. Okay, we live on a lake with 4 children and like for 4 years, and we would have never invested and bought a property and built a lake on a that didn't allow motorized use. First, I'd like to address neighbors' statements that were said today that our lake had heavy jet ski use and they can't sleep because of constant noise from jet skis and boats day and nights. Those are all lies. Our lake is very private and mostly always quiet with no motorized public access. On few nice days in the last few summers, we saw some neighbors riding their boats or jet ski at the most 10 days out of the whole summer for a few hours a day, never late at night. There were one day a few summers ago on the 4th of July that several jet skis were riding at the same time, but other than that, that never happened again. We bought our jet skis last summer and we used it for like 5 hours last summer and maybe an hour this summer. In case of a noise, I hear way more noise across from the lake on Beverly Lake Road than the lake activity. I'm gonna skip about the life because wildlife, we have plenty of wildlife. I have many pictures from every year that we lived there. I sent some to Kelsey and we have plenty of wildlife. That hasn't changed. Another person said that jet ski use has damaged the floating docks. We also have 2 docks and we had no damage. The only reason it could have caused an issue, I've seen some docks that are not properly constructed or tied. Some like a dock was tied to a tree on the shore instead of using a ramp. So any kind of water movement will damage it. One thing I want to bring it up, after interviewing realtors and appraisers, all of them said that property value on motorized lake is approximately 10 to 20% higher compared to non-motorized lake. So our property values will be lost if we decide to sell our houses, if we're going to put lake management plan in. If that will pass, we'll be requesting our tax bills to be decreased because that's not going to be fair to us. With initial meetings, we were trying to compromise on days and time share for the lake. But on the last in-person meeting, Kelsey told us that that day we will make our final decision on what the lake management plan would be. And during the meeting, we were creating a plan to try to address everyone's concerns with quiet hours, maybe possibly time shares like odd and even days throughout the month, so everybody can have like on odd days we could use lake with motorized, even days maybe not, or vice versa. But because of pressure from people that wanted to ban motors anyway, didn't want any compromise, Kelsey and her staff has decided that we won't make the final decision that day and instead send another letter with ranked choices. So during process, we've been told that in order for any lake management to pass, they would need at least 60 to 70% of votes. But now we're almost split in half and none of the other side concerns been addressed.
Can you please give us your final thought?
I'll give her till my minute.
So
Can't do it.
I feel the whole process was not done fairly. We never had time to kind of compromise. And I would like you to not pass this plan or also grandfather it, all of us in that purchased our homes and jet skis and boats that we could continue to use it with families. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pavel Lasik, L-O-S-A-K. I just want to just quickly, some of the things that stand out to me about the noise. I think there's definitely, I'm living across the lake and I definitely can hear more noise from the Beverly Road all day and even during the night, more than from the snow jet ski. And I think that's interesting that in the winter we do want to allow the snow machines, but I think snow machines, they do make much more noise than the jet ski, because I do have a jet ski, and if we're riding, sometimes I'm standing on my dock and my kid is riding kind of right in the middle of the lake, and I could not hear the jet ski at all. It's so quiet. So I think the noise complaints that I think it's, yeah. Anyway, I don't think anybody is really abusing the lake with their watercrafts and motorcrafts. It seems like I saw people, they've been riding something very responsibly. And especially, I just want to point out that it's the jet skis, watercraft, motorboats, or whatever people are been using on lake. I think it's used very rarely on the lake. It's not constant. It just few days out of the summer and for the few hours. I just really want to point that out because nobody's trying to abusing the lake. And it seems like I saw when people been doing the boards or kayaking or something. I personally thought people we've been very respectful of each other and not pulling out their watercraft, or if they've been somebody was just chilling and riding the boat, never really speeding the boat or anything like that if somebody else is on the lake. So I personally think we don't really need that lake management plan. I think we can continue being respectful and good neighbors to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kalmbach, Maria?
Good evening. My name is Maria Victoria Kalmbach, Kalmbach. I know I was supposed to talk, but I want to answer. I live in Kalmbach Lake for 37 years. I own property near to both lakes. I own half of the track that divide both lakes, and I'm not bird watcher. And I know a lot what happened with the wildlife. And people say the swamps nest was affected by the jet skis. But last year I saw when the nest of the swamp was washed out and no was baby swans. This year, because this animal have a very good memory, nesting in Kalmbach Lake in front of me. 39 days, because I'm a bird watcher, and they have, at the 39 was June 15, Wednesday, I check it up, and the mama, papa, and 6 baby swans was taking the sun in my yard, near to the lake. And I watched it later, they go, talk to the north, swimming, and stay for 2 days and come back. Later, the loons came and started attacking one of the babies because they had the nest, the loons, they no had the babies yet. And the swan decide walking and cross from the track and go to the Beverly Lake because normal they're living there because the loons always are around Kalmbach Lake. My boats, because somebody say the one person have 7 boats, was in favor of the wildlife. I don't live there. I don't know a lot of the people, and I only vote for the animals. They don't have the voice. I love wildlife. I love the peaceful. And some people say they don't listen to jet skis. I live in the south of Kalmbach Lake, and when all these jet skis are there, I can hear. I don't know if you have problem with the hearings to hear very well, but I answer everybody. I don't vote. I don't against anybody. I only vote in favor of the wildlife. And my vote was in favor of that. And I own part of I don't have a house there, but I own part of the land. And this is my answer for a lot of the people that have some question why 7 votes decide something, but it's not true because only 7 votes and it's 84 people that live there or more that decide there. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Patty Schrons. That's what I was going to say.
I have lived in Alaska for 43 years now, our great last frontier. And I think that I'm here because I feel a responsibility for our state, for our environment. And I found this on the internet. I mean, I love our state. I love the people on our lake. We have so many kind people. And I think that my feelings are that, you know, we're only on this planet for a short time. And what we want to do with our lives is important, but what we leave behind is more important. And, I could put my glasses on. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez spilled 11 million gallons, devastating wildlife and ecosystems. Multiply that number by 15, and you get the amount of oil and gas dumped into bodies of water each year by personal watercraft. And that's basically what I want to say, is that I think that we all have a responsibility for our environment, for our state that we love. And I think that what we want, you know, what I personally want for the lake doesn't really matter. What matters is our environment, our state, and our waterways. These are our waterways we're talking about. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Last one signed up, Ms. Stevens, Wendy Stevens.
Hi, my name's Wendy Stevens, Stevens. And my husband and I bought our property 5 years ago on Beverly Lake. And we carefully reviewed the CCRs, and, you know, we knew that it was a motorized lake. We were responsible, and we said, wow, we want to be on a motorized lake. But we never dreamed that people that already lived there would want to change all the rules, because, you know, it's a pretty big investment when you build a home and you base it on, you know, the CCRs. So I understand, you know, how everyone feels, and we want to be courteous to our neighbors, but at the same time, and we do love the wildlife. And I have noticed last year we probably had the most motorized activity since we've been there. But we also, every morning right now, we're waking up to swans. They're on our grass every morning almost. And like everyone else has mentioned, they're the babies, I don't know what they're officially called, but they've dwindled. I guess the eagles are eating them. But we have so many loons that my granddaughter said, I cannot fall asleep. They wake me up in the morning, and they keep me up at night. So like we see, what are they, sandhill cranes. There's just an enormous amount of wildlife. We also, I feel like the picture that was painted of our lake and the life on our lake has been exaggerated, because it's almost like it's being described as big lake. There's no drunk, you know, we don't see drunk families out there. We don't see nonstop jet skis. It's very quiet on our lake most of the time. So we did buy a brand new jet ski last year, and I feel like if you live on a lake and you can't even pull your grandkids on an inner tube, I mean, I think that's really sad that you can't do that. And we got 2 keys to our jet skis, and one of them is so that the kids can ride it at a reduced speed. And we had strict rules in place for the kids to ride it. And I will admit, I think we probably rode our jet ski more than anyone last year on the lake. But we looked at the amount of hours, and the whole summer last year, we drove it 31 hours. So that's in a whole summer. That's not very much. And I really think we wrote ours more than anyone. So, and I do apologize to the people that were upset by it. But, you know, it's just not fair that the rules can be changed on people that, you know, thought about this before they bought the property, and we wanted a motorized lake. And I feel like people have been very respectful on the lake, and we haven't heard tons of noise. And another thing is that, what was I going to say? About the voting. I feel like there should have been, yes, we want a lake management plan, or no. Because when the majority voted no, it's like with that vote, the whole plan was done. It's like there's no more input. They already have all the rules for their no vote. And if there is going to be a lake management plan, it should be, everyone should have input. It shouldn't just be, they voted yes, they want a lake management plan, and they got the majority vote. But at the same time, we should have say. The people that didn't vote yes, there should be more talking about it, instead of with their vote of yes, that established the whole plan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to, who has not spoken, who would like to speak to PC Resolution 22-20? All right, seeing none. Is there anyone online? There's no one online. All right. Seeing that there is no one else to be heard, is there any objection to closing public hearing? Commissioner Allen?
No objection.
All right.
No objection.
Hearing and seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Ms. Anderson, do you have any question or response to the comments made by the public that you'd like to bring forward?
Just wanted to clarify the breakdown between motorized watercraft use, personal watercraft use, and winter vehicles is different. So with a 15 horsepower limit, that's on motorized watercraft use. That's not on snow machines, ATVs, or anything like that. So just, there was somebody that had mentioned that it would also ban snow machines and ATVs. So I just wanted to clarify the 15 horsepower limit only pertains to watercraft. And then separately, with the option package that the majority chose, is a ban on all personal watercraft use, AKA jet skis.
Okay, and as long as you're here, do any commission members have any last questions?
I'd like a
Commissioner
question. I
Chesrow?
have a question. So what was the vote was the no plan voted? What was the vote for the no plan? Option C. What percentage of the people voted for?
46.
46% said no plan.
Yes.
And then 54 said
I think that's what it was.
A.
Yes.
And nobody said B.
Correct.
Okay, just wondering. Thanks.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Commissioner Scott? Or Glenn?
Yeah. In regard, there was not float planes mentioned in here. There's not ski planes mentioned in this thing at all.
The borough doesn't actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the borough has the ability to regulate aviation. We don't regulate airplanes, things like that.
When a plane is on, when a float plane is on the water, it's a watercraft.
So, yeah, and so
members of the audience, I'd like to ask you to please refrain from making comment while we're having our discussion.
So I'll say that the definitions for the regulation, or for what we're able to regulate as, or I should say as the assembly is able to regulate, is clearly defined within MSB 1759 Lake Plan or Lake Management Plan implementation. It specifically excludes float planes. Thank you.
And
Yes,
I've been
Commissioner
involved. I've been involved with a lot of lake management plans, and she's correct. The borough has no control over floodplains at all.
Commissioner Allen, do you have any final questions for Ms. Anderson?
I do not. Thank you.
All right, I just have one question. Were the requirements of 17.59 followed for this developing this lake management plan?
So the process for implementing and amending a lake management plan is actually found within MSB 1524-031. And they were, yes.
Thank you. All right, before the chair will entertain a motion, I am going to call a 10-minute recess. It is 7:30, and I have a feeling we'll be discussing this for a while, so I'd rather not interrupt things. So be back here at 7:40. Chair will now entertain a motion for PC Resolution 22-20. Commissioner Chesbro?
I move PC Resolution 22-20.
All right, do we have a second? Before I ask for a second, Commissioner Allen, are you back on?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? We have a second for the motion to approve PC Resolution 22-22. It's legislative. Do we have to have a motion to vote on? All right. Somebody pony up and I'll make Robert look the other way. So even if you second it, you can speak on either side of the matter. Thank you, Commissioner Scoggin. It has been moved by Commissioner Chesbro and seconded by Commissioner Scoggin to approve PC Resolution 22-20. An affirmative vote when and if we get there would mean that Beverly Lakes would have the management plan that was voted on. No vote would mean that, well, not that they would have it, that we would recommend that the Assembly implement it. Commissioner Chesbro?
Well, lake management plans are kind of unusual, I think, in this borough in that they are instituted by the actual people who are affected by it. And the process was followed that the borough outlined and people voted, and whether it was, 60% or it had to have 51%, and more than 51% voted to approve it. So that is the way that we usually decide things in this country. So I think this should be approved.
Commissioner Scoggin?
Yeah, I can't go along with this. I think this group of people could probably come up with a solution on their own, but I can't. The one group of people on the lake, the whole borough has access and rights to that lake, and you got a small group of people telling you what you can and can't do. And there's people that, there's a lot of things on both sides. The property values was a good point someone had. The wildlife's a big thing for me. I'm a big wildlife person. I don't like to see wildlife have any issues, but I do realize that, eagles are a problem too. And I know I feel like you guys can work it out, and that not everybody's going to agree, but I think you guys can work this out and come up with something better than what you brought forth or the borough's brought forth. Having the borough, I just think that it's better if people can solve the problems and keep it away from the government. Because once it goes to government, you lose all say. That's all I got.
Any other commissioner comments? Yes, Commissioner Kendig.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to vote in favor of this either, and I've got quite a few things bothering me. One of them is with the borough itself. The grandfather rights aren't addressed in code, one way or the other. The other thing is, when I read through the appraisers regarding the property values, that bothered me. And then the other thing is, when all the property owners bought their property, they realized there was no lake management plan in effect. So these things bother me, but it reminds me of, I was on this commission in 2014, Crystal Lake and Willow, and we didn't pass it. We voted it down, and but I made a suggestion to the people with the faster craft, the jet skis, that the people that had paddle boats and canoes and kayaks couldn't get out there if you had a couple renegade people that were really screwing it up for everybody. So they did, and at 4th of July, it was a real problem on Crystal Lake because there were people that were coming in, young kids, drinking and carrying on. And so the people that did have the jet skis took it upon themselves to kind of police it. And that 4th of July that followed, there was not one trooper call on that lake because they all worked together and they worked it out. So I can't, I think you guys can do the same thing. So I can't vote to move this forward.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Allen, any comments?
No comment. Thank you.
All right. I just like to say I don't particularly like the code for lake management plans. I know we've tried to change it a couple times. You know, respecting the public, especially a lake with public access. Anybody in the borough can go to it. I know that has not gone anywhere. Civil society is not based on winners and losers. It's based on compromise. And I'm really disappointed that a group that 60% of you thought that it needed something done tells me there was a problem on this lake, that neighbors weren't able to talk to neighbors and solve it and wanted a plan. And it came down to all the way one way or all the way the other way without compromise. But it makes me sad, you know? But code was followed, in my opinion. I don't like the outcome. I don't like what happened. The process has been completed without compromise on either side. So I feel like I'm bound to vote in favor of this. If there are no other commissioner comments, I've heard that there are people in opposition. So I guess we'll have to do, looks like a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Glenn,
No.
Commissioner Allen,
No.
Commissioner Chesbro,
Yes.
Commissioner Kendig,
No.
Commissioner Glashan,
Yes.
Commissioner Scoggin.
No.
The motion fails.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. With that, the public hearing on Resolution 22-20 is closed. Correspondence, agenda items. Mr. Ortiz, anything you'd like to expound on the agenda, upcoming agenda items?
There's not too much that I like. No comments on the upcoming agenda stuff.
All right, how about your staff comments?
Staff comments, just as normal, do not discuss any quasi-judicial matters. The other thing I want to do remind
Members of the audience, our meeting is not quite finished, so please carry your conversations outside or just wait a few minutes.
the one thing I do want to remind commissioners is to speak into this mic. You'll notice, like right now when I'm talking, if I go back here, nobody at all online hears anything. Facebook Live hears zero. Even when we're standing to do the Pledge of Allegiance, Facebook Live hears no Pledge of Allegiance. So you'll notice sometimes you'll see me doing this when I'm doing the pledge. So try to be mindful of speaking into the mic if you guys would, please. And that's all I got. And oh, actually, one more comment. I do want to make a public record comment about just thanking Kelsey. Kelsey did a tremendous job in putting this amount of work together. And although there were some comments that said some things, it's definitely to the contrary of how it was conducted and the way that the amount of work and volume and integrity of work that was done. So kudos to Kelsey.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
No comment.
All right. Commissioner Scoggin?
No comment.
Commissioner Glenn?
No comment.
Commissioner Chesbro?
I too would thank Kelsey. I know that these things that are so close to home can get really heated and people get really concerned, and I appreciate the work that you did. Thank you.
Commissioner Kendig?
Yeah, I would appreciate your work, Kelsey. These are emotional issues, but I have no doubt that staff did all the work they could for this thing.
Commissioner Allen?
No comment. Thank you.
All right. As the chair, I'd just like to say that was not a fun one, regardless of how we voted. I hate seeing neighbors not getting along, but I hope that's not the new norm out here too. So at 7:50 tonight, we are adjourned.